A god-tier anime. It's absolutely worth every minute of your time because in Monster, every single character, from the main to the most random side dude, carries a story of their own. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there lived a nameless monster. It longed for an identity, for a name to call its own, so it set out on a journey to find one. But the world was far too vast, so the monster decided to split itself into two beings, one heading east, the other west. The monster that went east stumbled upon a small village. At the entrance, it met a blacksmith named Otto. "Hey, can I have your name?" the monster asked. Otto shook his head. "I can't just give my name away. Come on, if you do, I'll make you the strongest man alive," the monster promised. Otto hesitated, then agreed. The two fused together, and Otto became the mightiest man in the village. People cheered his name, worshipped him, but power comes with a price. The monster inside him grew hungrier and hungrier, until one day, it devoured Otto from the inside out. Once again, the nameless creature returned to being just that, nameless. It repeated this over and over again, becoming a shoemaker named Han, then a tailor named Thomas. But no matter what name it took, the ending was always the same. Then, one day, the monster met a sickly prince in a grand castle. Just like before, it asked for a name in exchange for strength and life. The prince accepted. Soon after, he recovered completely, and the monster finally felt content with the name it had been given. But satisfaction didn't last long. Its stomach growled louder than conscience. And so, one night, it devoured the king, the guards, the maids, everyone. Years later, the two monsters reunited. The prince monster boasted proudly, "Look at me, I have a beautiful name now." The other, who had gone west, simply smiled, "I don't need a name, I'm happy as I am." But in the end, the prince monster swallowed the other one too, thinking it would make it whole again. Yet now, with no one left to call its name, that beautiful word echoed into emptiness. And that name was Johann. Everything begins with a murder case in a small German town. A government official and his wife were found dead in their home. Their twin children survived, the girl traumatized, the boy critically wounded with a bullet in his head. Both were rushed to the hospital. The boy's surgery fell to Dr. Kenzo Tenma, a prodigy in neurosurgery with hands that could literally save lives. After studying the scans, Tenma realized it was an impossible case. The bullet had entered from the front, lodged deep in the brain, and even grazed the middle cerebral artery. One tiny slip, and it would burst. Instant death. If anyone could pull this off, it was Tenma himself. But just as the surgery was about to begin, the hospital director rushed in, ordering Tenma to abandon the boy and operate on the mayor instead, who had just suffered a stroke. Tenma pleaded, explaining the child's dire condition. But the higher-ups didn't care. The mayor was wealthy, powerful, and promised big funding for the hospital. Tenma froze. This wasn't the first time he'd been forced to choose status over ethics, and last time, that choice had cost an innocent life. A widow had lost her husband. A child had lost their father. And Tenma had lost a piece of his conscience. So this time, he made a different choice. He ignored the order and followed his heart. Hours later, drenched in sweat and hope, Tenma successfully removed the bullet. The boy lived, but as fate would have it, the mayor didn't make it through the night. And from that moment on, everything began to fall apart. After choosing to save the boy instead of the mayor, his colleagues turned on him completely. They called him unprofessional, accused him of sabotaging the surgery team, and worst of all, of tarnishing the hospital's reputation. Overnight, Tenma went from being the top candidate for head of neurosurgery to public enemy number one. The hospital director, who also happened to be the father of Tenma's fiancée, was furious. "How dare you disobey me?" he snapped. And just like that, Tenma's dream job, his relationship, and even his dignity were gone in a single night. The director's daughter, Eva, didn't hesitate to dump him either. The woman who once called him her hero now called him a disappointment. Tenma was left crushed. Everything he built in Germany, his career, his love, his future, collapsed because he dared to follow his conscience. Lost and bitter, he paid a visit to the surviving twins, the Liebert children. He had come to Germany years ago, inspired by academic papers written by that same hospital director. But after joining his team, Tenma discovered the truth. Those brilliant research papers were actually written by other people. Just like the drafts Tenma himself had been writing under his name. He realized he'd been used all along, yet chose to ignore it for the sake of his medical ideals. All he ever wanted was to save lives. So why did doing the right thing feel like punishment? Consumed by anger, Tenma cursed under his breath. People like him don't deserve to live. But when he calmed down, guilt replaced rage. The boy he saved, that boy was proof that true medical ethics still existed. "You must live," Tenma whispered, "because I gave up my future for you." Meanwhile, the girl twin remained in a state of trauma. Since being admitted, she hadn't spoken a full sentence. Only one word repeated over and over: "Kill, kill." No amount of therapy or care seemed to help. The hospital director, being the scheming man he was, saw opportunity instead of tragedy. He knew these twins could make great PR for the hospital, a story of heroism and medical excellence, so he ordered his staff to arrange a reunion between the two kids and take photos for the press. When Tenma refused to exploit his patients for publicity, the director kicked him off the case. The next day, Tenma went to check on his patients, but before he could even enter the room, a terrified scream rang out. He rushed in, the girl had fainted, and one of the director's lackey doctors was holding a camera, ready to snap pictures. Furious, Tenma grabbed him and shouted, "Stop using my patients for your dirty games, their lives come first." At that moment, the boy opened his eyes for the first time since surgery. Seeing his sister unconscious, he reached out and began to cry. For Tenma, it was the most beautiful thing he could see, proof that the boy's surgery had truly succeeded. But peace didn't last long. Early next morning, the police knocked on Tenma's door. The hospital director and the two doctors who worked under him had all been found dead. The detectives wanted to know where Tenma was the night before. He told them he was home, but deep down, he couldn't shake the chill running down his spine, because before he could process what had happened, a nurse ran in, breathless and pale, to deliver one final blow. The Liebert twins, both of them, had disappeared. After the funeral of the hospital director, Tenma was approached by Inspector Lunge from the BKA, a sharp-eyed investigator with a mind that never rested. Lunge informed him that the cause of death for the three corrupt doctors had been confirmed: nitric acid poisoning. Hidden inside candy wrappers were found scattered around the crime scene. What puzzled Lunge was how all three had eaten the same kind of candy. He asked Tenma if he had any idea why. Tenma, however, didn't care. His only concern was the missing Liebert twins. Lunge advised him not to get involved, that the BKA would handle it. He suspected that the recent murders might be politically motivated, and the Liebert children could be the key to unlocking the case. As they parted ways, Lunge quietly added Tenma to his mental list of suspects. Meanwhile, Tenma, exhausted and disillusioned, decided he'd return to Japan once everything settled down. But life, as always, had other plans. In the weeks that followed, the hospital went through a massive reshuffle. Some people left, some got promoted, and to everyone's surprise, Tenma, doctor once disgraced, was suddenly promoted to head of neurosurgery. Life really was a joke. One day you're the scapegoat, the next day you're the star. Should he laugh or cry? Maybe both. 9 years passed. Tenma was still in Germany, living a quiet life as a respected surgeon. That peace was shattered one night when an emergency patient was rushed in. Adolf Junkers, a known criminal tied to a string of gruesome murders targeting wealthy, childless couples. After intensive treatment, Junkers finally regained consciousness. When Tenma came to check on him, the man could barely speak, but the few words he managed to whisper chilled Tenma to the bone. The monster has come. Upon hearing that the suspect could talk again, Inspector Lunge appeared almost instantly for interrogation. He tried every trick in the book: threats, persuasion, psychological pressure, but Junkers refused to speak. Only when Lunge mentioned the one behind it all did Junkers' expression change. Terror. Pure terror. Seeing the man's panic, Tenma intervened, demanding Lunge stop the questioning before it killed him. Reluctantly, Lunge backed off, though his suspicion toward Tenma only deepened. He'd never stopped seeing the doctor as the main suspect in the unsolved triple murder from 9 years ago. Later that evening, as Tenma walked outside with Junkers, the patient finally opened up. He spoke of his childhood dream: owning a cuckoo clock, the kind that chimes on the hour and has a little soldier popping out each time. It was an innocent wish, but behind that quiet story, something dark was ticking. When affection blinds reason, Junkers made a fatal mistake. Obsessed with owning that cuckoo clock he'd always dreamed of, he broke into a shop to steal it, but before he could even touch it, he was caught. That was the turning point of his life. From that day on, he became a repeat offender, and eventually ended up here, on a hospital bed, half dead and terrified. Dr. Tenma gently advised Junkers to cooperate with the authorities, to tell them everything he knew. But when Tenma looked into the man's eyes, all he saw was pure panic. Trembling, Junkers whispered that all his teammates, the ones working with him, had already been killed. That night, while walking home with a colleague, Tenma spotted a clock in a store window, exactly like the one Junkers had described. Hoping it might lift his patient's spirits, he bought it and headed straight back to the hospital. But when he arrived, he found chaos. The police officer assigned to guard Junkers was dead on the floor, foam still at his lips. A single candy wrapper lay beside the body. Junkers was gone. Unlike the murders from 9 years ago, this time Tenma had a lead, and he ran after it. The chase led him to an abandoned building on the outskirts of town. Through the storm, he shouted Junkers' name, and faintly, the man's trembling voice called back, begging Tenma not to come closer. Then, from the shadows, a calm, soft voice echoed, "Hello, doctor, it's me." Tenma froze. That voice, the figure stepped into the light, a young man, eerily composed, almost angelic in appearance. "Don't you remember me?" he said, smiling faintly. 9 years ago, you saved my life. You've forgotten the twins already? Tenma's mind went blank. It couldn't be. But it was. Johann Liebert. Before Tenma could speak, Johann drew a gun and aimed it directly at Junkers, who was now sobbing and begging the doctor to run. Junkers confessed everything in between panicked breaths, that he and his crew had been hired by Johann. All orders came by phone. After each job, they were paid handsomely. Johann was a monster, a killer with no mercy. Tenma shouted for him to stop. Johann, it's over. I know who you are now. Everything about you. Wherever you run, you can't escape. Johann tilted his head slightly, amused. Johann? Maybe I had that name once, he said, his tone light and almost childlike. But that's not my real name. No one knows where I came from. Not the couples who adopted me. Not even the Liebert family, only you. Dr. Tenma, you're the one who gave me life for a second time. He stepped closer, eyes like glass. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be standing here, a monster who kills without hesitation. Tenma tried one last time to reach him. Everyone has the right to live. You had that chance. Why are you taking it from others? Johann smiled, serene, almost tender. I'm glad to hear that from you. Doctor, congratulations on your promotion. By the way, everything you have now, your position, your respect, it all started because of that night. You wanted those men gone. You hated them, didn't you? I only gave you what you wished for. Thunder roared outside. A gunshot split the silence. Junkers collapsed instantly. Tenma stood frozen, his heart pounding as Johann walked past him, his footsteps calm, unhurried. In that fleeting moment, Tenma saw his face clearly, the face of a prince, hiding the soul of a monster. The next morning, Tenma went straight to the police, confessing everything he knew about Johann Liebert. But when the officers saw his haunted face, they didn't see a hero, they saw a suspect. Especially now, after Junkers' death. Still, with no solid evidence, they had no choice but to release him. Tenma stepped out into the cold rain, and as it poured down, one truth became painfully clear. The monster he had saved 9 years ago was now walking free. Fate seemed to enjoy playing games with him, determined to uncover the truth behind the monster named Johann. Tenma began his own investigation. He visited the neighbors of the murdered couples, hoping someone had seen or heard something. But most of what he found was vague, as if Johann had erased every trace of himself. That changed when Tenma met a blind old man, a former language tutor who had once taught Johann English and French. For the first time, a window into Johann's past opened. According to the old man, Johann, who then went by the name Franz, often mentioned Tenma, even more than he talked about his adoptive parents. To him, Tenma wasn't just a doctor. He was the person who gave him a second life. During the 14 months Johann lived with their family, he was an exceptionally polite and intelligent boy. But there was something off. Unlike other children who loved fairy tales or adventures, Johann was fascinated by fear. He wanted to know what people felt when they were on the edge of life and death. He studied terror like a scientist studies bacteria. The old man also shared one crucial secret. The only person Johann ever truly trusted was his twin sister. He once said he would come for her when she turned 20, at a place called Heidelberg. That clue led Tenma to a journalist named Jacob Maurer, who helped him trace the girl's adoptive family, the Fortners, living at 16 Necker Street. And as fate would have it, that very day was her 20th birthday. Tenma and Maurer rushed to the Fortners' house. At first, the elderly couple refused to talk. They'd buried the past long ago. But when Tenma explained that their lives were in danger, they quickly agreed to cooperate. Maurer asked to meet Nina, but the couple said she wasn't home. She'd gone to meet someone at the Heidelberg castle. Tenma's instincts screamed danger. Borrowing Maurer's car, he raced off toward the castle. Meanwhile, Maurer and the Fortners tried to call the police, but the phone line was down. Now, let's talk about Nina. She was a university student. The trauma of 9 years ago had stolen her memories, yet her nightmares never left. Recently, she'd been getting sweet, gentle emails from an anonymous sender. Her friends teased her into replying, and eventually, she agreed to meet him in person at Heidelberg Castle. Hours passed, no one showed. Feeling silly for believing a stranger, Nina got up to leave, but before she could go, the castle's gardener stopped her, insisting she stay. His tone polite, his eyes not so. Just as things got tense, Tenma appeared out of nowhere, urging her to follow him. He'd seen the man's suspicious behavior. The gardener lunged, but Tenma quickly subdued him. When questioned, the man said he didn't know Johann personally, that Johann had told him to finish something important before arriving. Tenma's heart dropped. He and Nina rushed back to the Fortners' home, but it was already too late. The journalist and the elderly couple lay motionless, lifeless, in the silence of that house. Under flickering lights and the faint smell of blood, Tenma began performing CPR, his trembling hands fighting against reality, hoping for a miracle that would never come. But all in vain. No matter how hard Tenma tried, no breath came back, no heartbeat returned. As Nina stared at the bodies, the horror of the moment cracked something deep inside her. Memories she had long buried came flooding back. flashes of gunfire, blood, and her brother's chilling smile. Tenma, realizing she was on the edge of a breakdown, quickly pulled her out of the house. But as they reached the front gate, they were met by two men who introduced themselves as detectives. They inspected the scene and decided to take Tenma and Nina in for questioning. At first, it all seemed routine, until Tenma noticed something was off. The police car's siren wasn't on. The men claimed they'd been called in by someone who reported the murders, but Tenma knew that was impossible. He'd checked earlier, and the phone line had been cut. Their badges didn't look official either. And to top it off, Tenma spotted a faint bloodstain on the blonde officer's sleeve. These guys weren't real cops. But before he could make a move, the car stopped at a checkpoint, and to his utter confusion, the guards confirmed that these were indeed legitimate inspectors, Muller and Menner. The contradiction made Tenma's head spin. Something wasn't right, but he couldn't tell what. He asked to step out for some air, using Nina's unstable state as an excuse. As they did, one of the detectives called out, "Dr. Tenma." And that's when every alarm bell in Tenma's mind went off. He had never told them he was a doctor. The moment of realization hit. They'd been exposed. The fake officers lunge, but Tenma reacted instantly. He grabbed Nina's hand and jumped off the bridge, plunging both of them into the cold, rushing river below. Hours later, they found refuge in a small riverside cabin. There, under the flickering light of an oil lamp, Nina finally spoke. Her voice trembled as she recalled that night 9 years ago, the Liebert murders. She remembered standing frozen as Johann calmly executed their adoptive parents. Overwhelmed by terror and grief, she grabbed a gun and aimed it at him. Her hands shook, her heart screamed, but Johann just smiled. That same calm, haunting smile. And then he said, "After you shoot, throw the gun out the window." She did exactly as he told her. Tears streamed down her face as she turned to Tenma. Why did you save that monster?" she cried. "If you hadn't, so many people would still be alive." Tenma didn't answer. He couldn't. Those same questions had tormented him every single night since the truth came out, but he also knew there was no going back. He can't rewrite the past. Only fight to prevent the darkness from spreading further. We can't change what's done, but we can stop what's coming. And with that, their long, grim journey to hunt down the monster truly began. To be continued next video, and trust me, things are only getting darker from here. So, don't forget to like, follow, and come back for the next part. See you then, Tilda.